So that's what we focused a lot too with our daughters. What are your interests? What type of people do you want to be around that can support you and build you up and help you find that confidence that's inside of her?
Often is, well, does it turn into something else? Like, you've overcome SM, do you now have more generalized anxiety or more separation anxiety?
Welcome back to another episode of the Unspoken Words podcast, a new edition production hosted by Dr. Elisa Shippon-Blum and the Smart Center. This episode features a detailed discussion between Dr. E and Kelly Melhorn, a board-certified behavioral analyst, on life after selective mutism. Kelly Melhorn is a parent of a child who struggled with selective mutism until the age of 8. Being that selective mutism isn't well known and the list of providers is very short, Kelly ended up having to support her daughter herself, as she learned as much as she possibly could about the misunderstood disorder of selective mutism. The transformation was life-changing for her daughter, and Kelly wanted to do what she could to help other families. So in 2020, Kelly created the Selective Mutism Help, HELP, which has since provided 7 free online summits, 2 in-person international conferences, and 27 podcast episodes. Kelly also recently became a board-certified behavioral analyst, allowing her to support kids from all over the world as they work on overcoming their battle with selective mutism. In this episode, Dr. E and Kelly discuss overcoming selective mutism, navigating social challenges, fostering independence in your children, and much, much more. And remember, before we get started, remember, if you have any questions on anything you hear in today's episode with Kelly and Dr. E, please head to selectivemutismcenter.org/ask Dr. E. That's ASKDRE. We read all of your submissions and we do our best to answer them on podcast episodes, in blog posts, and on social media. And speaking of social media, for the best of every episode, including this episode, make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram and on YouTube. We are at Unspoken Words _podcast on Instagram and Unspoken Words Podcast by Dr. E on YouTube. All right, without further ado, please enjoy our very first episode 2025 featuring Dr. E and Kelly Melhorn.
Hey everyone, before we get started, did you know that the Smart Center treats more than selective mutism? I'm Dr. Jenna Blum, lead clinician at the Smart Center and head of our growing General Mental Health Counseling and Assessments Department, otherwise known as CNA. CNA is a mental health agency that provides psychological assessments and counseling services for a wide range of mental health issues. We treat children, teens, and adults. Whether you're looking to get you or your child tested for ADHD, autism, or additional learning difficulties, or more, looking to move forward with counseling services to help with your depression, or looking to treat your generalized anxiety disorder, our team is ready to stand by your side. So please find counseling and assessments at the Smart Center in this episode's description, or head to counselingassessments.org and book your free complimentary call with our team today. Okay, enjoy the episode.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Unspoken Words. I am here today with Kelly Melhorn, and I'm honored to have you today, Kelly. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your podcast. So thank you for the invite, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Absolutely. You know, just so our listeners know, we both have known of each other for years, but we hadn't met officially until we were at the Selective Mutism Association, or the SMA conference, in October in Chicago.
Yeah, it's the first in-person conference again in like 5 years. So it was so great to be able to go and see everybody in person again.
It really was. I was telling them it's just so nice to connect with people and kind of just to have conversations and listen to people speaking and all the new developments in the field. And it's just really exciting. I always enjoy the conference and seeing people that I've known for many, many years, but families who came and things like that. But we sat next to each other and instantly connected and had great conversation.
Yeah.
And then another similarity about the two of us is that, one, we're incredibly passionate about this field.
Absolutely.
And we both got into this for the same reason, our children.
Selective mutism, I knew nothing about it 6 years ago. And once I found out about it with our daughter, it's been all forward motion with understanding, helping her, and now helping other people from around the world. It's truly an amazing experience that SM has brought to our family and just be able to help others now.
Yeah, no, you and I are both so similar that way. When my Sophie was struggling, you know, she's 30 plus now. So when she was a little girl and struggling, I felt incredibly lost. because
Hmm.
there was just so few people that had a clue at all. And people were just seeing SM so misunderstood.
Yep.
So it's just incredible how, that has fueled both of our passions
Hmm.
for this field and to help others. And to,
Yeah.
we don't want people to go through what we went through, try to figure things out
Right.
and things like that. Again, that's another similarity. But,
Yeah.
one of the things when we saw each other was, hey, let's do a podcast. We instantly connected. I thought this is great. And we both agreed on a really great topic. So our listeners will kind of get a glimpse of, life after SM. Let's talk about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What made you want to do that topic? Like when you brought that up to me?
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much talk about, that journey of overcoming SM, but there's kind of a maybe not quite sure what overcoming really means. And then what happens afterwards? Is it like a light switch? Like, oh, SM is off, life is great. Or what other challenges come up? So I think setting parents up for success when it comes to overcoming what that means is important because I didn't know what that meant, and I still might not know what that means. So I just thought it would be a really great conversation for you and I to have, being that we're again similar in that our children have been able to overcome their SM, but maybe have some other challenges still.
Yeah, and both our kids are different ages. Like you said, your daughter's around 11-ish and my daughter's 30, so there's many years between them and, life has gone on. Sophie's overcome her SM for many, many, many years. The way I was seeing this episode is it's hard because there isn't just one size fits all presentation of post SM.
Hmm.
Just like treatment, it's an individualized kind of presentation. And to me, overcoming SM, and I'm curious as to how you see it, but how I see it is, you can speak. You can speak in every setting. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are confident. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're initiative, elaborative, expressive, and have the best conversation starters, expanders, and things like that. But you can speak. So, given a
Hmm.
question, you can, you know, answer. And I think that's where we can start is like, what does it look like for different people?
Right.
And when you thought about it or think about it, and especially having a child that's 11,
Hmm.
like, what are your thoughts? How do you
Yeah.
see it as overcoming SM?
So I think the first part of it for us, so our daughter was on medication for I think about 3 years. And as we were weaning her off, we just kind of kept watching. Okay, is she still able to answer questions? Is she still able to go to a friend's house and talk to the parents? Can she still do those things? And we were seeing that yes, she could. So it's like, okay, we're off medication and we're kind of tiptoeing through life a little bit. Like, how is the new school year going to go? What kind of accommodations does she still need? Do we still need the IEP versus the 504? So kind of looking at that. So once we got her off the medication and just kind of watching her start all of that, we could see that yes, she's able to communicate. For her, her personality isn't maybe the loudest. She's not going to be maybe the most outgoing kid in the world. And that's fine. That's who she is. So I think realizing that for us, seeing her being able to connect with peers, to connect with teachers in a way that's more than just talking, for us, that that showed that she was overcoming it. So to be able to run and play outside with her friends or go to the friend's house and ring the doorbell and ask for somebody to play or to choose to go back to her second grade teacher and give her a hug and say how are you and have those conversations, to me that connection of being able to do what your heart desires is showing that she has overcome her SM.
No, I love it. And what I kept thinking when you were talking to me is the word functioning. That
Yeah.
to me, when I tell a family, like you don't have SM, like your child doesn't have it, or as an adult, you no longer have selective mutism, you are functioning.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, like I said, you're necessarily the most confident individual in the world yet, and that
Mhm.
there aren't still things to work on.
Mhm.
But you're functioning. Socially, you're functioning. Emotionally, you're functioning. Academically or a workplace, you're functioning. And communicatively, you're functioning. How much of that, will vary.
Mhm.
So that's how I see it. I always tell it it's all about functioning and it's about seeing it in those different domains: social, emotional, academic, communication, functioning, and really to assess where do we still need to kind of work. So even though some individuals have found their voice, again, it doesn't mean they're the most confident individual and the most independent. So I think that's important Then
Mhm.
there's the individuals who overcome SM and, their reasons for SM. And I want to just touch on that briefly. I know a lot of my episodes and a lot of my work is really on the basis that SM is so much more than not speaking. And so
Absolutely.
for me, and just being a physician and a diagnostician, I wanted to understand.
Mhm.
So the whys of SM, which I have again episodes and lots of stuff on it, is really important because that is going to dictate how much, you need to focus in other areas, right?
Yeah, it is important to kind of see the whys, and that I see it the same way, is like what's maybe going on inside for them. And I think as our kids get older, there's that shift. We're not the just child anymore. We are our own person, and we can see ourselves in comparison to other kids. And so it kind of changes maybe their motivation and their desire to be connected to other people. So as a parent, we kind of have to maybe adjust how we're supporting them and giving them more of their choice on how they want to proceed, what is important to them, and supporting them in that way. Then like, okay, we're going to go and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. It's, well, what matters to you, and finding their interests and supporting them through that way. So again, they can learn that they're supported in their interests, and they can find that connection with that to lower that anxiety. So that's what we focused a lot too with our daughters. What are your interests? Like, what type of people do you want to be around that can support you and build you up and help you find that confidence that's inside of her?
I love how open you are and how you talk to your daughter in such a way that gives her that freedom and the
Mhm.
confidence you exude when you're talking to her
Mhm.
that then projects onto your daughter instead of, "Hey, look, I'm worried about this. Are you sure you want
Yeah.
to do that?" Or, "I'm not sure you should try that activity. It could be."
Yeah.
It's knowing what our children's limitations are, of course, but also at the same time really nurturing their growth and independence, which only fuels their progress
Mhm.
and their overall, like, confidence, independence. It's really important.
Mhm.
So I think it's understanding the whys. So for individuals, what it looks like, I think of someone with very severe expressive language disorder that still with that. They may still go to treatment, but they're able to speak, but they need to work on their elaboration, their initiation, and things like that. So that's
Mhm.
not, yes, they can speak. They've overcome SM, but they have to have accommodations, interventions,
Yeah.
strategies, coping skills that they know work. And that
Mhm.
goes the same way with, we see quite a lot of kids, a lot of teens that present to us and adults who the underlying why of, let's say, a learning challenge or a processing difficulty, whether it's auditory processing, whether there's other types of processing difficulties like even ADHD,
Mhm.
dyslexia, different like processing learning challenges that affect the give, take, back, forth a conversation, deciphering and pulling that out. Too often, I'm not sure if you see it this way, but I certainly do, where everyone focuses on the speaking, but they're kind of not looking at those other reasons as to why is my child not speaking?
Right. Yeah. And I think too, with that, the extreme anxiety our kids are going through day after day, once we kind of start peeling that back and it's not as extreme, those other things do start popping up. They've always been there, but now the ADHD, those types of things can start showing up more because the anxiety isn't holding them back. And I think as practitioners, knowing that it's not like, okay, we got them talking, hands off, we're done here. It's what's next? What can we help them with next? And as a practitioner, I made that mistake a time. It's like, oh, I could have, there's other avenues we can go down than just the talking aspect. And so it is for any practitioners that are listening, it is, give it some time after they've so-called overcome their SM to see what other things do pop up. I know for us, especially, it's separation anxiety. I was hoping that the SM and the separation anxiety were like one of the same, so that the SM is good, her separation anxiety will be good too. That unfortunately wasn't the case. So we are still dealing with those types of things and finding opportunities to show her that she can be separate from us, and going through that. So it's still having that investigative, hat on of like what else could be going on. And as a parent, being okay with more challenges coming. Again, I was under the impression that, okay, great, SM, we're good. we're good for everything. And nope, there's still more things, and that's okay. And that's what I've learned is it's okay. I'm still going to support her in whatever she needs.
You mentioned she was timid, and a large percentage of kids with SM have a timid temperament. Many are diagnosed with social anxiety, so that lingering social anxiety doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's gone.
Right.
It just means that it's hopefully very much reduced, and their confidence and all the social confidence and their communication is increasing. So yeah, we may still be dealing with some social anxiety traits.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, like with adults, like because I've been doing this for so many years, I have so many families I treated when they were 5 and they're now like 30. And it's like you talk to them and they're functioning totally beautiful, but I saw them, they were very dysfunctional. But what that dysfunction was at that time was creating the SM aspect, but they were able to overcome that. So a very highly sensitive individual that gets overwhelmed in loud, large, lots of people environments, very, very introspective, very perceptive. They get very
Mhm.
overwhelmed. They were able to learn to deal with that. They were able to learn to cope through their social anxiety and really figure out the tools that work for them. When I arrive early, this helps me. And when I go with a friend, this helps me. There's different things they learn and helps them with their overall confidence. But you mentioned the word anxiety. And one of the things I say a lot, and I talk about this at Communicamp all the time to the families, I say, can you imagine if you like, and I say this like to the first row, I say, can you imagine if you all had a fever? You just came in, I'm a doctor, you come into my waiting room and you all have a fever. And I said, all right, the 5 of you who have a fever, come on back. Come on back into my waiting room, into my exam room. Everyone would be looking at like, what is she doing? She's a nutcase, right? And the reason I'm mentioning that is because anxiety is the same way. Why does an individual have anxiety? Why your daughter had anxiety may be different than somebody else's anxiety. And what's really important to figure out is where is this anxiety coming from? I'm thinking about kids that have some learning challenges or kids on the ASD spectrum, on the autism spectrum, where they can't figure out the social puzzle. And that's so frustrating to them. That is so anxiety provoking. Or I'm sitting in class and everyone's starting and completing work on time and I'm not understanding what the teacher's saying. Their anxiety is going up, or I can't get the words out quick enough because I have an expressive language challenge and I'm just overwhelmed. Like their anxieties are different. And so, as you clearly said, as they start to find their voice, because you can find a voice, but those other lingering whys are kind of sticking around a little bit, or they're not fully addressed and they air their head. So I'm not sure you see it this way, but I see it where it's almost like it was there, but it's so much clearer now.
Yep. Yeah, because right, we don't have that selective mutism holding them back. Now we can see all of their true colors a little bit clearer, and again that being okay with that. Again, as a parent, it's very overwhelming. I'm the first to admit that having a child with SM is very overwhelming. You've mentioned it before. There's, not a ton of research. There's much more now than when you started on your journey, but it's all very overwhelming. You can't really relate to your friends. Their kids are doing sports and your kid is crying in the corner. It's very overwhelming. And so thinking, okay, yeah, we're overcoming SM, but there's more. It's okay that there's more. And again, I think as our kids get older, we don't have to try to make rainbows and butterflies out of everything anymore. I've learned to be much more vulnerable with our daughter and letting her know that I get anxious. Before our podcast, like I could feel that anxiety creeping in. And to your point too, like, but now we have coping mechanisms. I know to slow my breath down. I know to, take control of the things that I can control. I like using acceptance and commitment therapy for the older kiddos as well, knowing that we don't have to be afraid of anxiety. We don't have to fight against it. We can accept it. Like, yep, come on, anxiety, come on with me to school today during this presentation. I know you're going to be there, but I'm going to do it anyway because I get to choose now what's important to me. And if anxiety is there, anxiety is there, but we can still do the things that we like and what we want. And as our kids get older, it's so fun to see their interests and see all that they can do. My daughter, so they had like their little morning news and they were asking for volunteers to say their favorite candy for Halloween. And she's like, Mom, I rose my hand and I put it down. And I rose my hand and I put it down because I wanted to, but I didn't. So there's this like back and forth between her anxiety and who she is going back and forth. And her teacher happened to see her hand up. So she called on her, like, all right, you're going to be interviewed. And she's like, I wanted to do it because it's something I want to do now. I want to be able to try these things. And it was like such an amazing moment for me because I do feel that if she would have just been like, I can't, the anxiety is, I can't do that. But then there's that acceptance of, I can do this, even if I'm anxious. So those moments are just so fulfilling because it's that intrinsic, like they're coming out and they're finding those opportunities on their own.
Yeah, no, I love this story. And I keep thinking of so much as you're saying stuff. I'm like, oh my God, we only have an hour here. I mean, we could talk all day, you and I, and maybe we do more podcasts on different topics. But I will say the more children understand, the more a teen understands, and the more anyone who's struggling with anything understands it, in my professional opinion, the more they're in control of it.
Yeah.
And when you're in control, it gives you, confidence, and you start to navigate it easier. You're not as afraid. When I see families at the Smart Center, it's the ones that are completely confused by this. They don't understand. And so instead of, they're very avoidant. They're, I'm never going to do it. I can't do it. And there's a lot of negativity and parents are feeling helpless. But once you teach them and you understand, and for me, the bridge is just a godsend because these kids understand where they're at on the bridge and they
Yep.
understand why that strategy worked, and that if I take my time to write it and the teacher knows to give me that, like, there's all these things that work hand
Mhm.
in hand. All of a sudden you see them more willing to do more.
Yeah.
And so again, this fuels it. But to get back to our topic, understanding how the whys affect and that lingering aspect that might still be needed to be dealt with.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing. That's life and that's realistic. It could be
Yep.
anything, right? We all have to be we're dealing with something every day in some capacity. But I want our listeners to know that yes, there are many individuals that completely overcome these challenges that affect social communication, and they are elaborative and they are initiative and they are able to be thriving and their life is ahead of them, so to speak.
Mhm.
So yes, you can completely overcome this
Yeah.
without residuals, but it does go back to what were your whys, because you still may need to be focusing on that. But for those that are highly sensitive, a bit timid, maybe there was a misunderstanding, too much focus on talking when they weren't there yet. Yeah, you got to get over those hurdles. But once they're over that and they're home in their home environment, they are initiative, they are elaborative, they can start conversations, they have they overcome it, right, Kelly? Like
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
done.
Yep.
So there are those that are
Yep.
done, but if they're not, that's not a bad thing. It's like you completely said, and it's like life is going to have hurdles that we have to overcome. It may not be
Yep.
communication, it might be something else.
Yep.
And what I get asked often is, well, does it turn into something else? Like you've overcome SM. Do you now have more generalized anxiety or more separation anxiety? And how would you answer that?
Well, again, kind of like what you mentioned before, it's kind of always been there, that generalized anxiety, that separation anxiety. It's going to be there. And so if we again can recognize in it. So for our daughter, I call it like a honk breath. So get this little like vibration honk in her throat. And so that's my cue is something's going on. So I'm much more in tune to those things that could trigger her. So it's like, well, what's going on at school? And it could be, I have a presentation coming up I'm really worried about. Okay, let's talk through that. So it's going at it more as an inquisitive, like, oh, I've noticed and I'm wondering, giving our kids those opportunities as they get older to start looking on the inside, like, yeah, I'm noticing my stomach is really tight. Instead of, as the little kids, maybe they're just like, my tummy hurts and they don't know why. Is that now let's investigate that. Like what's going on in our life that could be bringing these symptoms on. So again, just kind of teaching them body awareness that maybe we didn't focus on before because we wanted them to use their voice, and now we can talk with them more about what's going on inside, and now let's look on the outside and see what could be causing that and how can we help support those situations.
And with your daughter being 11 as a parent, you're able to be so actively involved. And I will tell
Mhm.
you that for me, with my Sophie, even though she's a fully functioning, married physician in practice, bought their first house, have a dog, living her life, a ton of friends, doing her thing, she is still a sensitive individual. And when she was a little girl, she would get overwhelmed easily.
Mhm.
And she would need what we called it R&R days, like and every once a semester, twice a semester, she'd have decompression days.
Yeah.
And to this day, she'll still say to me, I needed one of those days. But
Mhm.
she herself can read herself and know when she's getting overwhelmed to
Yep.
be able to pull back and go to yoga. Like she loves
Mhm.
yoga. She does meditation. I don't have to call her or say, hey, what's going on? She figured that out over the
Yep.
years as we worked together when she was young. And I remember when she was in med school, and I remember she was really overwhelmed once and like, well, I mean, a lot when you're in med school, but
Yeah.
she was just like, she was very overwhelmed. And, I could hear how she was talking. I go, Sophie, did you do your yoga today? And she's like, no, I haven't done it in 3 days. I counted these. I said, Sophie, I know you like a book. Come on. And she's like, you know what, Mom, you're right. I'm going to the 5 o'clock class. She called me at 8 and she's like, oh my God, I had to do it. I don't, I get so my point is like, yeah, Mom, I still reminded her, but they learn these skills on their own. And that's what we
Mhm.
want. Life after
Yep.
SM is that as you mature and get older, you learn the coping skills. You learn how to manage yourself. So you're
Mhm.
not dependent on others
Yep.
to be able
Yep.
to do it. But as parents, yes, we are there to help them, navigate. So we
Mhm.
found kind of the improved social relationships that occur post
Yep.
SM. I mean, our kids, individuals in general, thrive on connection.
Yep.
So now a good ramification of post SM is hopefully the relationships are there, the social connections.
Mhm.
And you
Yep.
clearly said that with your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been so fun just to see her connect with others. And again, kind of again looking at the whys. Everybody's why is different. For her, it felt like maybe her nervous system wasn't picking up those cues of safety in her environment. So we kind of worked on those types of things so that she can feel that connection and now wants that connection because that's what we are as humans. We need connection around us and being aware too of the personality she is drawn towards. Maybe the kids that aren't the most wild and crazy she doesn't want to be with. She likes to be with the kids that maybe just want to do some crafts for a little bit and then get her feeling safe there and then maybe branch out to those kids that are running around playing football and kickball to build her confidence in that. So again, just kind of noticing the type of people they're gravitating towards and supporting that and then watching that kind of expand. For her, she actually has started playing football. She plays flag football now, and that's like we call it beast mode. Like beast mode has been activated because we gradually kind of introduced her into these environments. I know when she was little, it's like, okay, you're gonna play soccer, go out there, have fun, and she's like, the frozen kid and teeth. So now we just learn these small little steps, let them feel that, like, wow, I did that, and then find their own path. And her path has been flag football, and it's so fun to watch her just beast
Oh.
mode.
Hey, listeners, we'll get back to the episode in a second. I want to tell you about CommuniCamp, our popular 3+ day intensive group treatment and all-day parent education and support program designed to help parents, children, and teens overcome selective mutism, social anxiety, and extreme shyness. Over 3+ action-packed days, your child or teen will engage in immersive activities guided by expert clinicians that build confidence and communication skills in a supportive, fun, and collaborative environment. Spaces are limited and spots book up fast. To learn more, please find CommuniCamp in this episode's description or head to communicamp.org and complete our interest form, and our team will be in touch. Let's help your child or teen find their voice at CommuniCamp. Let's get back to the episode. That's another kind of newfound voice and confidence that you're talking about, this personal empowerment to be able to see, I like this and I'm doing well at it and I'm thriving. That's an empowerment feeling. And so I see that. I see them taking on new skills. They're willing to take that risk. They're willing to try. And you clearly have that. I love hearing this. And your daughter's only 11. I mean, to
Mhm.
you, she's older,
Yeah.
but to many of our listeners, she is only 11.
Mhm.
And she has this personal empowerment. So these kids and these teens and hopefully adults, as they've overcome SM and overcoming it, you see that empowerment, that risk taking, that willingness, that confidence, that independence. So
Mhm.
I love that. And also academics. I see kids fly, they may have been at grade level, some even struggling a little bit because of that confidence, the anxiety. But when you really are addressing through proper accommodations, interventions, if there are some whatever it might be, learning challenges, etc., their academics improve because they're thriving better. They're able to do it. The teachers know how to accommodate them. The same with career goals and paths. They're more willing to try things, and they're making these leaps. And I just see these individuals over time. At our Communicamp, one of the things we do on the second day is the parent panel and the kind of kid overcame SM panel. It's like hearing their voices, and they come on there, and our families that are coming to Communicamp love it because they're on a panel, whether they're virtual or they're sitting there, and they've overcome it. And you hear these incredibly articulate individuals. And recently, one of my prior patients I saw when she was 5, I used to joke with them, or they would joke with, she was like cousin It, remember, with the hair in front
Yeah.
of your face? Well,
Hmm.
that's how I met her, and hiding under the table with her long, gorgeous hair. Now you know, she's in Harvard Law School, and so articulate and so verbal and so confident, and travels all over the world for different adventures through her work and things like that. And I'm listening to her, remembering what she was like. So, having overcome this early, for our listeners that have young children or early teens, like, don't wait. Like, sometimes you go on these forums, which for me are really hard sometimes, because you'll see my daughter's 13 years old and what do I do? And they're asking parents on a forum. Go to an expert, go to somebody that knows how to support you to really navigate treatment. Yes, you have all the good, you're gathering your resources. I get it, but don't wait. Like, find someone that understands so that your child can gain those skills. You can be trained, teachers can be trained, and overcome it. Like, you can overcome this. There is no reason for someone not to. And so the hope is from this podcast is, yes, you can overcome it, but you need to get the treatment.
Right.
You need to have this addressed. Don't you agree?
I agree. Yep, absolutely. And it shifts, when our kids are little, it is a lot of the parents that are there to support them and guide them and find the different opportunities to, overcome some challenges. But then there's that shift, the preteen teens. There's a distance that naturally happens between our kids and parents because they're now starting their own independence towards, their own adulthood. And so for my teen clients, especially, it seems like they want outside help. They don't necessarily want their parents involved in every little thing they're doing. They like having that somebody who's not connected to the family they can open up to and really strategize. And that's what I try to focus on is, for these teens, it's simply, where do you want to sit in the classroom? Let's start there. What will make you feel good if in that situation? And what small steps can we work on to get you to that point of overcoming SM? And again, just letting parents know it's okay. This is a natural part of growing up is you find those social connections outside the home. And so, we want to support our kids where they're at. So instead of like, well, did you do this? Did you do that? You should do this. Why don't you do that? It's, hey, what would you like to do today? Do you want to go on a walk? Do you want to watch a show? Do you want to cook a meal with me? Finding those ways of connecting at that level with the preteens, the teens, and then letting that professional get into the nitty gritty because from my experience, they're going to open up more because there's not that emotional connection of, well, I have to do what my parents say. They're going to be mad if I tell them the wrong thing or, um, you know, I don't know comes up a lot. Like, what do you want to do? I don't know.
And building that independence and giving them that kind of choice and empowerment is important because, this is an insecurity for many, and we learn that when we talk to these kids is that they see their other kids in their room, in their classroom, thriving, going up to other kids, answering questions, raising their hand. And, that's not a great confidence builder to feel that you can't do that. So this self-doubt can be lingering. And as you go through therapy, finding these areas of strong interest that they will find their friends. As you get older, you find your people on your areas of interest. When you're a little guy, mommy and daddy can set up get-togethers and play dates and things like that,
Right.
and just baking and doing art projects and playing with Legos is good enough for
Yep.
many. But as they age, it's finding these areas to build that. And one thing that you did say that I see all the time is as kids get older through the preteen, teen years, they tend to be you tend to see less progress with parents present. That where they start to really blossom is when they're away from their parents. Not that their parents aren't loving or that they don't love their parents. It's that they sometimes see themselves a certain way around their parents. They have that fear of positive evaluation. If I do this now, what are you going to expect of me? The parents may jump in and save them, which is why parent education is so critical, to be able to teach them how not to do some things, but how to kind of retrain them in terms of how to engage their child. And a lot of these parents letting go is really hard. They've had to like, you know what I mean? We both get that, right? We just wanna hold them, hug them, and hopefully they don't feel any discomfort ever in life, but they've gotta get out there and do things, and it's and l relying on that treatment professional to hold your hand as you navigate this, but allowing them those times away from you to blossom, because life after SM is they are growing up and they are becoming independent and learning that. So, I think that's important. So, let's talk about some strategies for thriving post SM. And we did touch on it a lot in what we've talked about, you know, some strategies of knowing mindfulness works, like you were discussing yourself. Like you don't have SM, but you know, the deep breaths, all of that will work for any sort of anxiety, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, just checking in with our kiddos, noticing those subtleties, and especially for like our daughter starting a new school year, like what do you need? So I could tell her till I'm blue in the face that anytime you need a break, you can go. If you need to go to the nurse's office, you can go. If you need to do this or that, you can do that. But coming from me, it means nothing. So I have to say to the teacher, please tell my daughter if she needs to use the bathroom, she can just go. And so they'll say, you can go to the bathroom anytime you need. And it's like poof, magic. She knows. So those little things really do matter. And again, I think as a parent, like I mentioned before, just being open with your own issues. I don't, air all my things on my kids, but it is important, I think, to be like, hey, I was driving on the road and somebody cut me off and I got so frustrated and angry and this is what my body was feeling. But then I remembered like I need to get home safe because I value you guys and I want to be home for you. I don't need to chase this person down the road, and modeling that for them so that, again, our kids when they're little, they see us as these superheroes and we can do no wrong and we're perfect and we're not. So my kids are starting to realize that like mommy struggles, daddy struggles, we all struggle and that's okay. We're going to work together to find that support.
I love that, and, that is exactly how I've raised my children. I never was, like, presented a perfect image of myself. So when I had worries or fears, I was sad, I like you said, I didn't unload everything, although they say, "Actually, mom, you did." No, but what I was gonna say was, I let them know when I felt nervous or scared. I let them know when I was anxious about something in a realistic way so that it was okay for them to feel it. One thing I deal with a lot in my practice are kids that have a bit of a perfectionistic way of being. And sometimes when I really talk with the families, some of these families have this like way where they don't show their own imperfections and difficulties. So when the children are struggling, they're afraid to take risks because mommy never has this difficulty, daddy never has this difficulty. Like, they're never nervous, they're never anxious, so they don't wanna show it. And so I do think it's important as parents that we're open and we share. And so that's another thing, Kelly, that we have in common. And I also feel like now that my children are all adults, it's fostered such a great relationship with them to be open and real with them over the years where, I hate this statement and this is completely off topic and I'm sorry, but I have to say it. They'll say things like, you shouldn't be friends with your child. And I think that's hogwash. It's about mentoring, it's about coaching, it's about being there, it's about supporting, it's about sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience. But yeah, I'm friends with all 4 of my children.
Yeah.
They're my best friends.
We want them to
Right?
want us still. And, we want to cultivate a different, it's not what I say goes. It's tell me what's going on. Tell me your day. My son every night asks me, Mom, how was your day? And we have this open conversation about our days. And I'm hoping that we'll foster that relationship like you're talking about is still having like, call me up. How's your day? How's your
Absolutely.
day?
And they need to feel safe to talk with you
Yeah.
because life is not that linear path up. It's ups and downs
Oh
and
yeah.
swirls and flips. And And they need safe people to feel, to open up to. And yes, friends, therapists, other mentors, but that parenting aspect to treatment is so critical. So as individuals are overcoming this, you still are there in their life to kind of booster them, be a support. So although that like brief, off topic isn't necessarily directly connected to life after SM. It really is in some ways. I want our families that are listening to this to realize this isn't just go navigate your done and kind of have this completely righteous way about everything. It's open up and be open so that when they do have some of these challenges, you're supportive continuously. I do
Yep.
notice that sometimes this is something, believe it or not, you really have to work on in treatment with parents is to help give them those skills that
Mhm.
they don't know what to do sometimes. They
Mhm.
think they have to be perfect and actually imperfect is perfect.
And I think too, as a parent, we don't have to solve all their problems. And that's what
No,
I had been doing for so long. It's like, oh, this is
no,
a problem. I'll fix it. But now it's
no.
like, wow, yeah, you're right. That is tough. And just sit there with it and not like, oh, well, you should have done this. It's like, oh, yeah, that is hard. Like I can definitely see why you're feeling that way and having that validation. So that's been a change that I've had to make these past couple of years is that I don't have to solve all of her problems. She can have them, and that's okay. And again, modeling how I solve my problems so that
Yes.
she can see that in herself.
No, I love this, and this is why treating the whole person is so important because helping build confidence and independence is critical. And you know, I can think of an 8-week independence workshop of this week we're working on this and that next week. And the reason I'm mentioning it is like decision making. Like how often as parents, do you hear from your clients, your patients, like they should do this, you need to do that, you have to do this. No, stop with the you need to and the you shoulds. It's, hey, let's work on this and have them help make decisions. You don't make them for them. You don't fix everything. In order for them to become this independent post SM thriving social confident social communicator, they need to have independence. They need to have that confidence to be able to tackle life's challenges. So it's not just overcome SM and find a voice, it's how are you using your voice? How are you navigating the social world? How
Mhm.
are you advocating for yourself? How are you starting a conversation with confidence and knowing who to talk to and when? And that's what you have to teach them. But that always comes down to
Yeah.
confidence, independence, self assurance, all of those things, right? I feel like it's like we're motivational speakers right now,
Right.
Kelly.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I think the other part of that too is getting them excited to tell the parents. Like the story I
Yes.
shared with my daughter doing the news, she didn't have to tell me that, but she wanted to because she knew that I would be excited with her. And that as a parent is everything. Like you said, just like having them be open to share with us instead of getting the I don't knows and doesn't matters. It's that wow, way to go. That is amazing. And that I get goosebumps just thinking about it because that is what we all want for our kids and fostering that is so important.
And if I were
Mhm.
to like kind of piggyback off what you just said, is let them tell you without saying to them. So for our listeners, kind
Mhm.
of a goal for you as parents is when you hear these like leaps, these it like progress, when you hear that they raised their hand or they went up to a friend or they wrote a note or they answered a question, accept it. Be happy. You must have been
Mhm.
comfortable. That's awesome. Avoid saying to them in that moment, well, now that you did this, why
Mhm.
don't you go and do that? Because what happens with that statement is they feel a bit shamed. They feel like, wait, that wasn't good enough. And then they become less willing to open up to you in the future because they don't want to hear, why don't you do this? They're sharing with you, look what I just did without you necessarily jumping up and down and doing flips, but they're testing the waters in the beginning to see how you react. So, what I tell parents all the time is try and resist the next steps. Just accept it, read the room, and just go with it. Don't feed it. Don't keep dwelling on it. Just go with them. Just be
Yeah.
there with them. Just sit with that.
Yep.
Accept them and be happy for what they're sharing, not what you need to do now. Well, if you do this tomorrow and you go up to your teacher and you ask her this, and well, now that you raised your hand in this class, well, you're going to do it in music tomorrow? Like, no,
Yep.
stop because that does not work. Not in that moment. It only brings them to a point of like the air out of the balloon. They're like, oh, I guess that wasn't good enough. And that leads to fear of positive evaluation. If I do this now, what are you going to expect of me? And that creates avoidance. And that creates more anxiety and lack of confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, parents have the best intentions doing
Yes, of
that, but now
course.
recognizing that. And I'll often tell my teen clients, how do you want your parents to react? Like if you do some, I have a teen client who is in theater now. He got a big part in a play. I'm like, well, how do you want them to react? He's like, I just want them to say that they're proud. Like, great job. And leave it at that. Like, we don't need any comments after, of things in the future that maybe now they have to work towards. It's, yeah, just accepting that moment. I mean, wow, that's amazing.
I really like you.
I like you too.
I just do. Like, even when we sat together at SMA, I just like felt this instant connection to you. I think we have a lot of similarities in how we raise our children, but how we see patients. And you don't focus just on speaking. Of course, a goal is to become a confident social communicator, but it's all of these other aspects that have to
Hmm.
come together for that person to become a confident social
Yep.
communicator.
Yep.
And
So,
so much is parent education, and so much is it helping with personal empowerment and independence and confidence building, and really seeing what is going on with this family that may be affecting this individual's anxiety and
right.
avoidance. And
Hmm.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
yeah. And so I see that similarity with both of us, because so often when I consult with professionals, on a consultation basis, I'll hear them just focus on talking, 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 and they need to talk. And how do I get them to talk? And I heard them talk, like, it's all they talk about is talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, pull back. Like, I don't understand anything about this individual yet, other than everything you're telling me about talking.
Mhm.
And that is just like one aspect to that person.
Yep.
And when you really work on that whole person, and that's the family as well, and you understand it, it's amazing how it all works together.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And then pair that with understanding anxiety and their common interests. And, that's why, like I said, you go to a professional so they know kind of to look at that big picture. Who is this individual? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? What gets them up in the morning? What motivates them? What all of these things are so, so important. And going back again to my client who's now in theater, nobody knew that he liked theater until we asked, like, hey, what would you be interested in? And via sharing my screen and having them pull things over to communicate in a Linoet board, we found the ways to do that. So we don't have to talk to get to know these kiddos. We don't, have to focus on that right away. And just getting to know them, having that relationship, building that rapport, so foundational. Get them to where they need to be these confident people in their everyday environment.
I do. And along the journey, as they are navigating life post SM, you still may need to work on different aspects in treatment, whether it's, anxiety for other reasons. Because if you have a like genetic, biological, kind of tendency towards it, right? Every relative has had it. Is it the genetic aspect, and or learned from every generation having the same way and passing it on? Yeah, there's a learned piece as well. But yeah, you may still need therapy for different things,
Yep.
right? You still need to work on other ways to calm yourself, and learn how to, regulate yourself, mindfulness, things like that, and continued skill building in areas. Like I said, we get kids or individuals that come to the Smart Center and they are verbal, but they may lack confident initiation, elaboration, expression, conversation expanders, conversation starters, like, finding friends, keeping friends, going for that job interview, doing all these things, working on skill building may still need to be there. So I don't want to mislead people that it's all or none, which is how we started, but there are some things you may still be working on, and that's life.
Yep,
Take
all
the
of our
word as
kids need
that's
skill
life.
building. Yes, absolutely. It just might take our kiddos with SM a little bit longer because they didn't have that practice and they didn't have that history. And so we have to help them maybe for a little bit longer than our non SM kiddos. But my child's preschool teacher said it best. She said, everybody's working on something. And when I heard that, it's
Everyone.
like, yes, everybody is. And that's okay. We all have our challenges and we're all going to fight and we're all going to find who we are as when we have that support around us. So again, even though I don't overcome her SM, I'm still here to support her and still helping her find her path and helping her recognize when things are a little off and finding those coping strategies that work for her because we've had all of these years of working through everything. And it's just, it's a different struggle. It's an enjoyable struggle, if you will, because now we can see them as a person, see all that they can accomplish.
And before we end, I shared with you earlier that I've talked to parents that's kids have overcome this many, many years ago that started out with me 25 plus years ago, so to speak. And what many of them have said to me is that because we worked on communication and because we're in an age of technology where you aren't having to verbalize as much and make phone calls and go to stores and you can order Instacart and Amazon, there's so many kids without SM that lack social communication skills because they're not interacting on an everyday basis. And a big part of treatment is getting out and exposures and being able to approach people and working on these skills at the stage that you need to work on as you're progressing into confident verbal communication. And so many of these families have said, my daughter is like the best communicator. Like she will share, she's open, like it's unbelievable. But then you have somebody that, let's say, didn't really know this was SM, right? And they're 11, they're 12, they're 13, they're 18. They were hoping the child would just outgrow it. Well, in those many years of not having the opportunity to be socially engaging and working on skills, they've like lost skills. Like for even speech and language, you can develop an acquired speech and language difficulty, an expressive difficulty, because you're not having the give, take, back, forth of social communication. So you lack the ability to be overly initiative, elaborative, and expressive. And I keep saying that because that's what you need to work on as you find your voice. It's not just verbal, but for some, not all, they do need to work on those other skills, like the post SM, right? And so you have the ones that are over it, thriving, doing amazing. It's a thing of the past. They are dealing with other challenges in life and blah, 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 blah. But then you've got the others that these residual whys are hanging around and they're there, right? You can't, cure some things. If someone's on the autism spectrum, you can't cure autism. You can help them become a more functioning being or learning challenges and ways to help them. So I think my goal for this was for our listeners to realize there isn't one size fits all, and
Right.
life after SM can present in many, many different ways.
And we're going to be there no matter what to support our kiddos and
We will
follow
be
their
there.
passions.
Thank you so much for doing this. This was so much like meat and potato
I
episode.
love it. It was so good. I'm so glad our paths finally crossed in person and we got this opportunity to share our stories. So again, as a parent going through this, it's so validating to hear other people's stories and to have that hope. And I'm glad that you and I have this platform to do so. There is so much to be thankful for with our kiddos, no matter where they are on their journey, and to remember that they are them and we're going to support them and love them and find those opportunities of success. And it's a beautiful journey.
It is a beautiful journey. I look back on Sophie's life and, to see her, like, what is it? I wish I knew then what I know now. Like, if I knew if I knew then what I know now, that she'd be where she was, I would never have had the passion to have tried to figure this out, to develop SCAT and to understand SM as a social communication anxiety. I did all that because no one understood my child. And I was left trying to figure it out. And as a physician, that's what I did without realizing it back when. It was really, I need to understand her. I don't get her. No one understands her. She's being misdiagnosed. And so for our listeners out there, there's many of you who go to a therapist that it just doesn't feel right. Like they're telling you things that aren't making sense about your child. Go with your gut.
Mhm.
Kelly, as a mom, right? We understand our child in terms of what feels right. We may not always know what to do. And that's where you go to experts to help you in whatever area that is in life. But when something doesn't feel right or feels right.
Like you said, it's not a one size
And,
fits all. So find what
no,
works for you and your family and your child and your experience and your own individual journey, and the path will guide itself.
absolutely. And really pay attention and just love your kid because no one wants to be mute.
Right.
And acceptance is so important. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was a wonderful treat to talk with you today. And I hope we get to see each other soon.
We will. We will. If you have questions on anything covered in this podcast episode, we want to answer them. Please head to selectivemutismcenter.com smartcenter.org/ask-DRE. And we'll do our very best to answer them in upcoming podcast episodes, Smart Center newsletters, and on social media. Thank you.